Thank you, brother, for recognizing that trip hazard that would end up sending me to the hospital. I'm almost sure. Just kidding. Good morning. Little useless information for those of you on the live stream. This is for free. Don't start your clock because I'm not preaching yet. This week is St. Patrick's Day is this week, and we all know what color we should be wearing on Thursday. Orange. You are Protestants, if you Irishmen, if you are Irish. Irish Protestants wear orange. I will give you one word of warning. Don't wear orange to an Irish establishment. On St. Patrick's Day, the beating that will follow will be your fault. Discretion is the better part of valor. Wear green. That was free. Apparently, I don't know how to explain this. Colossians chapter 3. Are we still in Colossians? Yes. Chapter 3, starting in verse 5. Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passions, evil desire, covetousness, idolatry. On these accounts, the wrath of God is coming. In these two you once walked. You were living in them, but now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices, and you have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge after the image of the Creator. Here there is not Greek nor Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave, free, but Christ is all in all. Last week, Paul says, since, your Bible will say if, and we read that sometimes as a conditional. It's not. It's really conveys the force of since. Since you have been buried with Christ, why do you submit to elementary things of the world? Why do you submit to the regulations of the world? Why do you submit to the earthly things of the world? And then he comes on and says, since you have been raised with Christ, pursue the heavenly things. Pursue the things that honor God. And now he says, how does one do this? How does one pursue heavenly things? Notice Paul does not begin with, here are some really nice rules, follow these, and you're okay. He doesn't go, since you've been raised with Christ, follow these things. Eat on a certain, or worship on a certain day. Eat only a certain type of food. Don't do this. Don't smoke, drink, dip, chew, and date girls that do. Notice he doesn't do any of that. He then transitions in how we are supposed to seek these things. And one of the first things we do is we must be engaged in an activity. Notice what it says. Let's slide that back. Another trip hazard up here. I'm aware that you guys are trying to get me. Ms. Van. Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you. Make it dead. Not suppress, not abide with, not tolerate, not I'll just overcome it, not it's something I struggle with. The phraseology is hunt it down, root it out, and exterminate it with due prejudice. Go on a recon, find the enemy, engage the enemy, and destroy the enemy in place. We don't do that. A lot of times what we do is go, well, you know, I'm working on it. Well, how are you working on it? Well, I just asked God for help. Kill it. Kill it. The terminology and the phraseology is that of a violent act. Why? Because sin is a violent act against you. It's not something we play with. It's not something we tolerate. It's not something well, one day I hope to be delivered from it. One day I hope to be delivered from a hostile occupation force. No, pick up a weapon and go kill it. Since you have died to the things that are of the body and have been raised with Christ, one of the first things you must do is be killing sin. This terminology is where we get the phrase mortification. One of the best books on this is written by the Puritan John Owen. John Owen has a brilliant quote. It says, "Be killing sin, or sin will be killing you." It referenced the struggle of the believer. It's not something that we kind of go, well, I'm working on it. No. Be actively engaged in warfare against it. Pursue it, find it, eradicate it. You say, well, I don't have that problem. I've successfully eradicated. Liar. Let me just tell you right now, if you believe that you have killed all the sin in your life, you are lying. To yourself first and to God second. There are always sin within the believer's life. Why? Because you are on this side of glory. Well, I've exterminated to the point that it doesn't bother me anymore. Be mindful, be watchful, be wary, because it will pop up. Be about it. Actively seek and make it dead. That's how we begin to pursue the things from above. We begin to eradicate the things within our life that trip us up. Notice it's not a list of rules that we follow. It's not a list of things that we do. It's putting to death what? What does he ask for you to put to death? Well, let's take a look at these things that he's asked us to put to death. Sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desires, covetousness, which is idolatry. Sexual immorality. Another word in your text might be fornication. It is to consort, the actual, we're going to go back to denotation, connotation. Denotation is the definition of the word you'll find in the dictionary and lexicon. Connotation, what it has been adapted to mean. Denotation, to consort with prostitutes. Those of us who understand those terms know exactly what Paul is saying. To ply their wares. It has been adapted in the first century world more as a habitual sexual habit. Sleeping with someone who is not your wife in an unhealthy and immoral and ungodly way. Fornication. Sexual immorality. Put to death those things. There are a lot of things that we struggle with in an American culture. We are overwhelmed with imageries on the idiot box that tell us all these things that is right and good. And we say, well, it's a loving thing to have. Great. Listen to the advice of Peter and wait till you're married. Not, well, I just won't think about it. Well, I'll work hard at it. No, kill it. Kill the desire. Why? Because it will destroy your life. American phenomenon is beginning to shift. There's a book that was written about called Every Man's Battle, and it talks about the struggle of men with sexual immorality. And the problem is, folks, within the last about 20 years, there has been a radical shift in this. This used to be really more of a male-dominated issue. But in our culture today, because of the over-sexualized nature of our culture, it is now becoming a male and female issue. About 20 years ago, 1% of all the pornography bought, sold, or watched was watched by women. 1%. About 10 years ago, it had jumped to 15 to 20%. It is climbing at an ever-increasing rate. As our culture becomes desensitized to these things, we begin to accept these things on both sides. Kill it! Kill it! Don't passively allow it. Don't sit there and go, well, I struggle. No! If you had an enemy, if there was someone attacking your house, would you go, someone help, I'm struggling with it? Or would you actively engage in killing the individual? Kick at my door at 4 a.m. and see which one I do. Smile, there'll be a flash for your photo. Why? It's a threat. It's not a threat. It's a hostile combatant against you. Kill it. Uncleanliness. Impure, immoral thoughts dirty, filthy thinking and deeds. Here's the thing. A lot of these range towards the sexual in nature, but there's also a concept where it has a little bit more than just the sexual nature. Unclean thoughts. Thinking things about an individual and ascribing to them an ulterior motive. Why? Because you'll see this in the second half that he kind of weaves these two together. Passions. The New Testament world, it meant violent desires. Put to death the desire to sleep with someone other than your wife in an unnatural and unwholesome way. Or at all, period. Put to death the mindset that leads you down the road to dirty thinking and immoral thinking, but also thinking ill towards other individuals and utilizing the uncleanness of your mind to begin to poison yourself and the body. Passions. A violent desire, uncontrolled desires with strong desire to do wrong things. We understand the word passion as a lot of other things. Well, I'm really passionate about my Bible. Not quite the same word Paul's using there. Connotation, denotation. He isn't saying just let it sit there and lie there. Sin never lies there. It is active. Whether you realize it or not, you should be active against it. Uncleanliness. These are things that you should be not hoping God will take from you, but actively involved in killing within you. Evil desires. Let us be under passion. Covetousness. One of the more lexical definitions is to desire more than you have. It begins to take on a connotation of looking at what your neighbor has and coveting. In this realm, it has the understanding of a sexual nature because we've been talking about terminology that has a sexual tone to it, to where you look at your neighbor's wife, you look at an individual that comes by and you go, I was at the Stars game Friday night. Stars won, by the way. It's great. It's a great game all around. My wife got that for us for our anniversary present. I'm a big hockey guy. It was a great entertainment except for the two drunks behind us that drank something like $66 worth of beer, and they only had like 4. $11. I'm sorry. Even if I did drink $11 for a soda, no. I think I'll swallow spit for 3 hours. I'm cheap. I can make my own copper wire from a penny, folks. But during the game, you would have the Stars Ice Girls come out upon the ice. And they weren't wearing full-length clothes. To call it a uniform would require some more clothing. There's only one reason why they dressed them that way. It's to keep the drunks entertained. And you watch them, follow them up and down the ice. I like watching people, and it's amazing what people will do when they don't think other people are watching them in a crowd. And you're like going, yeah, I'm looking at my watch, I'm talking to my wife, I'm looking at the scoreboard, which they're on the scoreboard, I'm looking at the blimp dropping casino tickets, going, I don't need those. But there's a reason why they dress them that way. Covetousness. In that realm of a sexual nature, put it to death. What he's saying is, look, one of the first things you do when you get involved in a sexual sin is you covet what you don't have, and you begin to plan a means to obtain it. Then you build within yourself a passionate desire to make it occur. You then have dirty and impure thoughts about making it occur, and then you act on the deed, which is fornication. Put it to death. Put it to death at its source. Kill it at the source of covetousness. Kill it there. Fastest way to kill something is cut off the root, is it not? And yet we toy with it. Covetousness can also be utilized, and is also utilized in looking at something your neighbor has. Look at the debt Americans carry. We carry a large amount of debt because we try to keep up with other folks, because we think if we have what they have, we'll be happy. Put that to death, folks, because outside of Jesus Christ, you're never going to be happy. If you have a life that pursues all those other things, you will never be happy. Why? Because you have a life that pursues only things that are transitory and not something that is eternal. Put those things to death. Why? They kill the mind. They poison the body. It is about killing you or you killing it. You are in a no-holds-barred grudge match against these things. Kill it. Why? Well, not because it's good to do. Not because, well, you'll live a happier life. Not because, well, the preacher told me to, so I guess I better go out there and half-heartedly go and engage in killing it. Have you ever seen an army fight half-heartedly? When I was in Iraq, I never was out when anybody got shot at, but you'd see the videos from the guy shooting. You always can tell the guys that really didn't have a passion for the fighting on the other side. They were the dude shooting with the weapon over their head behind the rock like that. That guy really isn't truly committed to his cause because he's hiding behind the rock, just spraying and praying he hits something of value. Don't be that. Search it out. Find it. Eradicate it. It begins with the thoughts. When the thought comes to mind, kill it. Well, how do you kill it? Well, you kill it with Scripture. You kill it with having accountability, folks. You kill it through prayer. You kill it by killing the thought at its source. I will not think this thought. Lord, help me not think this thought. Why? Why is it important? Not because you'll have a good life. Check this out. On account of these things, the wrath of God is coming. On account of these things, the wrath of God will eventually get there. God may actually finally get mad at you. God may get mad and look down and go, on this account, the disaster, one of the other ways to translate this, the disaster God brings is on its way. Practice these things and not kill them, and the Lord has already sent a disaster or his wrath upon you to come against you. You kill these things because the Father says these are detestable before his sight, and as you play with these things and not kill them, his wrath is assuredly coming to you. Kill it, because God is going to search it out and eradicate it from you. His wrath is coming. We don't play with these things because, well, I'm not always just a good Christian. No. Be about killing it. You will never be perfect in this side of glory. You will never be fully sanctified on this side of glory, but you have the opportunity to be in the process of sanctifying your life. There will never be enough sins for you to mortify. There will always be more. Well, I've killed this one, good, battle's over. No, there's more. Why? Because you see here, you have thought, the action of thought being turned into a physical action, and then the completion of the physical action. In these you too once walked when you lived in them. When you were a non-believer, you walked this way. But you have died with Jesus Christ. And you have been raised with Jesus Christ. And so the old flesh that Christ has removed through the new circumcision has been laid aside, and that's how you should have walked when you were a pagan. But you're no longer pagans. You are now believers, and you now must walk in the things after God. This is something that should have been done and is to be done when you're a heathen. I expect heathens to get theology wrong. I expect it. I expect them to believe that there is no God. Why? They're heathens. It's like I expect my dog to bark. Why? It's a dog. If it talked, it would weird me out. I don't expect heathens to have perfect Christological theology and an understanding of what it means to know Jesus Christ, barring the action of the Holy Spirit in their life. However, I do expect believers to do so. And folks, before you go, well, what about you? I screw this up. Here in a minute, I'm going to talk about me for a good little bit, and so you'll get to see that I screw this up. But that doesn't negate the fact that daily I get up and strap on my armor and fight this fight. This is how you used to walk. Stop walking in it. The language is very blunt here. Paul has shifted to very blunt and very direct language. If we haven't gotten it, you're never going to get it. But now, you must put them all away. That's a nice way of saying, kill it. Now you must kill it. Kill what? Anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth. We're going to stop right there because there's one that he singles out. Anger. It is the settled feeling of being angry. I know, I defined the word with the word. Work with it. I've heard people say, my thermostat runs a little high. As a believer, your thermostat should be at 0. I say this as an individual whose thermostat runs a little high. You're going to ask Stephanie on the way to the Stars game, the idiot in front of me! On which she goes, baby, they can't hear you. I know! That's the problem! There we go. When I came back from Iraq, my first tour, Stephanie kept saying to me over and over, do you realize you're very angry? And I go, no, I'm not. She goes, no, you're actually kind of angry. You're angrier than you were before you left. No, I'm not. Guys, you've had these conversations, maybe not this conversation, where you look at your wife and go, yeah, okay, whatever, baby. I'm angrier. And so I go to my friends who we all went to war with, and so we all changed together. I go, hey, my wife is saying I'm angry. What do you guys think? No, man, you're the same as when you got here. And the reason why they all believed I was the same because when I got there is we all went through the experience together, and we all progressively got angrier together. So they didn't see the change. But since I was gone for so long and then came home, the change was noticeable to her. You're nuts. One day I had finished preaching over at 25th Street Chapel on Fort Hood. We were over here at the little intersection, the four-way stop at Walmart that's like a death race to get through because people can't figure out that the guy on the right goes first. How they issue driver's license in this town, I do not know. He cut me off, and then he flipped me off. I was out of the car and at the front quarter panel, and I was going to pull him from his car and hurt him. And I stopped because I felt someone looking at me. And all I see is him. That was initially started with anger, that then transitioned to wrath. Wrath is the explosive response to the anger that one has. I was angry, and then I allowed my anger to explode to the point that I was going to do bodily harm to an individual that was just a jerk. Put it to death. My second deployment, I sat with the family life chaplain for a long time to talk to him because I didn't want to come home angrier again. Scenario in my life in which I struggle with. If you'll see glimpses of it, and I work very hard to put it to death. But it's a hard one for me to put to death. Why? Well, it just is in my life. And it has taken moments of where I have exploded in undue wrath towards folks around me. Put it to death, folks. I can tell you it's not a pleasant feeling. Put it to death. Don't play with it. Don't sit and excuse it by saying, well, my thermostat is set a little high. No, believer, your thermostat should be at 0. Why? Because if you want to go with the thermostat should be set a little high, then Christ's thermostat against you should be set a little high, which means we all die and go to hell. And yet his thermostat was set so low that he allowed himself to be nailed to a tree for your crime, and then allowed people to lie about him, spit on him, pierce his side, whip him, and yet gleefully went to the cross because he understood. He understood the end result. Put it to death. It'll ruin your life. It'll kill the things that you want to have grow. Malice, vicious disposition, spiteful, ill will, hurtful feelings. Malicious talk, saying things that are not so because you have your feelings hurt. I see children do that. Well, she did this. Well, he did that. You know, I have kids that have fights every morning, because mine don't. And so, and it usually begins with somebody doing something, and then someone exploding and doing something, and then something being said, and then off to the races you go. You guys never fight as couples. Right? You've never fought about the toilet paper, which direction it rolls. Forward, the American way, not backwards, the communistic way. And you will begin to develop malicious thinking. You know, I've warned her about that. I have told her that only communists roll their toilet paper off the roll backwards. It's not an efficient way of doing it. They're doing it just to get me angry. Malice. Also kind of lump gossip in there. You know I hear. Some of the malicious talk that you'll ever hear in your life is gossip. Nothing true about it, or if it is true, the truth has been distorted to the point that it isn't true. Ill will. Someone hurt my feelings, therefore I use that experience to bear ill will against anyone who fits that criteria. Ill will. Put it to death. Not, well, I just won't think about it. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works, because it'll pop up in the least moments and pop up when you're the weakest, and it will make a fool out of you, and instead of putting it to death, you've allowed it to get the better of you. Put it to death. Kill it. Because it's killing you. Slander. Some translations have railings. King James uses blasphemy. We'll talk about that why here in a minute. Slander. Slander speech. Something that you know to be false, yet you are saying it, and it is untrue about a family member, a believer, anyone. There are folks in churches all over this land that practice these things and see nothing wrong with it, and they put on a facade when they come to church, but we all have seen the crack. I'll be honest with you, I struggle with anger and wrath. Those are my big hot button issues. You can send me off to the races by pulling in front of me. And I know I can go around the car, but I was here first. I actively have to be engaged in that, because if I'm not, it'll make a fool of me. Some of us are involved simply in the matter of slander and malice, where we actually don't participate in things that are openly active, but we participate in things that are passively aggressive. We say things that are slanderous towards our brothers or sisters, or slanderous at our employers, or slanderous towards our employees, or slanderous towards our own family members, and we then begin to poison the water with ill will and intentions. Put that to death. Find it, identify it, engage it, and destroy it in place. Because it's destroying you. It's destroying me. My anger unchecked would have destroyed my marriage. I'm almost as sure of it. Why? Because no wife is going to live with an angry man for long. Find it, engage it, and destroy it, or it will destroy you. Slander. Why does it says blasphemy? Well, when we begin to slander the things of God, we commit blasphemy. That's what blasphemy is when we begin to slander God and what God does. That's why the King James uses blasphemy. Obscene talk, filthy and abusive language. Filthy ties back to the sexual immorality and the covetousness where you have those jokes. Those conversations that you know you shouldn't be involved in. Obscene and abusive language, where you utilize a position to be more direct. Many times in the Army, I've had a one-way conversation with a subordinate. I have been on the end of a one-way conversation as a subordinate. And sometimes it gets to be very abusive in its language, and that's not the time to stop the person yelling at you and say, I'm sorry, sir, your conversation to me is abusive, because that usually only ratchets up the intensity. Obscene and abusive language has no place coming out of the mouth of a believer. Slander has nothing coming out of the mind of a believer. Ill will has nothing to come out of the mind of a believer. Wrath, anger has nothing to do to come out of the mind and the physical actions of a believer. These things do not reflect the love of Jesus Christ. And yet all of us are susceptible to all of them because we are still human and still fight against a nature that has poisoned our body, that Christ has removed spiritually from us, yet we must physically be involved daily in killing, mortifying the body, sanctifying the body. Because if it doesn't, it poisons us. More than that, it's killing us. How many of you, if you found out you had cancer, would go, well, I'm just going to pray about it. I'm not going to go see the doctor, and I'm not going to take any action against it. You would go see the doctor and pray about it. You would take action against it and pray about it. But yet we don't apply that with these things. Well, I'll just pray about these things. That's great. Prayer is a great and wonderful tool, but be engaged. Paul doesn't say here, pray, therefore, what is earthly in you. No, put to death, you engage, destroy, through the power of God, through the action of prayer, and through the use of the text, and engage and destroy these vile things within your life. Notice here, verse 9. Do not lie to one another. See that you have put off the old self with its practices. Notice it puts lying over by itself. Don't lie to each other or lie about each other. Stop it. Kill it. Why? Lies have no use in the body of Christ. There is no purpose for us to lie. There is no reason for the body to have liars within it. You say, well, yeah, but there are. Yes, there are. How do you respond to someone who's caught in a lie? Kill him! No! How did Christ respond to him? It's not that, oh, well, we know you're a liar and all is forgiven. No. But you engage the topic of the lie. You hold the individual accountable. And here's the thing. Some things look to be false that actually with more details are not false. Is that not true? Be careful how you approach these subjects. Stop lying. There is a great deal of emphasis in the Greek text upon these words. Why? Why are these things important? Why do you stop these things? Well, one, the wrath of God is on its way for those who practice them. But then check this out. You have put off the old self with its practices. These things have been spiritually removed from you when Christ raises you from the dead, state that you were in as a necrotic creature, and it has died. You should be actively putting it off because you are no longer spiritually that entity. Put it to death. Kill it. Why? We have a new self being renewed in the knowledge after the image of the Creator. We have a new nature. We have a new self. We are indwelled with the third person of the triune God, and yet we live an anemic life thinking we're trapped and held prisoner by these lusts, desires, fits of anger, malice, slander, lying. When in reality, you're indwelled with the most powerful entity in the world, whose aid is there to help you crush these things and keep them destroyed. It is a war that you must fight. It is a war you must be involved in. It is a war. The text actually begins with, and the language has the connotation of continually, which means since the time you were born to the time you go see the Lord, you are to be actively involved in this war. And if you believe that at a certain age this stops, you have deceived yourself, dear Christian. It will represent itself in different forms and different fashions if you are not still engaged in its death. Paul doesn't give an age limit here in the text. Paul does give a direct command to be continually involved in killing it. Why? Because you can still lie at 90 years old. You can still lie at 80 years old. You can still lie at 70 years old. You can lie at 9 years old. These things still have to be killed. Why? Because we have a propensity towards the things we do not want to do. Kill it. Find it and kill it. Why? Because you have a new nature. You have a new nature. Through the renewing of knowledge after the image of the Creator, for the purpose of renewing your life after the image of the Creator. Not that you're killing Christ again, but you're actively. Well, how do I have this renewal of knowledge? I guarantee you, all of us have a book, whether it's leather bound or cardboard, or in my case, two-tone vinyl, that contains 66 books that will tell you and teach you how to do these things. And yet, sometimes we have to go to read the words. John Owen, the theologian I mentioned just earlier, says, every unmortified sin will certainly do two things. First, it will weaken the soul and deprive it of its vigor. Secondly, it will darken the soul and deprive it of its comfort and peace. Unmortified sin weakens the soul and weakens your ability to have peace in the Lord, because you are dwelling in an uneasy armistice with something that actually is trying to kill you. Here, there is not Greek or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave, free, but Christ is all in all. In the body of believers, it's not who your mom and daddy are. It's not what nationality you come from. It's not that we think that, certain races or certain beliefs or certain people of certain height, people of certain material background. I knew a guy that started a church that was invite only. Invite only. That's a very interesting concept of church. I showed Stephanie a church that up in Lancaster where the pastor owns the ground, the buildings, and the house and everything upon it, and everything, all the money goes into his account. That's a dangerous church. Both are dangerous churches. Be killing sin. There's nothing about us individually by what we're born with that makes us exceptionally pleasing to God, except for the fact that God sends his son to die for you and reconcile you back to him by making a necrotic thing live again. Lest we think so highly of ourselves. Paul is very clear in this passage. All these things listed are a daily battle. Every morning, you must strap on your armor and go to war with an enemy who is hell-bent on killing you. Be lethal in return. You're here today, and you have lived a life that has been more of a sham than it has been anything else. You have had an imagery of godliness, but no real godliness. Today's a great opportunity for you as we begin to look towards Palm Sunday and soon to Easter and the risen Lord's resurrection, for us to begin to kill these things in the text that we have seen today. To actively be engaged in your faith and the death of your enemy. You're here today and you say, I have no concept of who Christ is and why I should be putting to death these things that I enjoy, but I would like to know more about salvation. And I'd like to know more about this life that is to be followed in Jesus Christ. I'll be here at the front. My microphone will be turned off. You may also have been coming for a while and say, I'd like to join the fellowship of Skyline Baptist Church. I'd like for you to do so. As the praise band comes and sings, if you will stand,